What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for a special interview. You can see some extra faces are here below, but it's not Jaren Zero here, and we're here to talk about the film Lucky, which our review just dropped the other day. Make sure you get a chance to check that out and keep your eyes peeled because it is releasing this week, March 4th on Shudder as a Shudder original. This is a film you do not want to miss. It is very interesting, very intriguing, and it definitely will spark some conversations. But today we have the director, Natasha Kermani, and we have one star, and another star is to come in 1 second, which we will definitely make sure we joke on him about his tardiness. But Kausar Mohammed is here, who plays the character Sarah in this. How's it going? Oh, look, as soon as I said that, look who jumps in.
There he is.
Hey, Dhruv, I just wanted you to know I was just about to introduce you, Dhruv, who plays Ted in this film. But, you know, I love me some Dhruv because I love me some Rod from Good Trouble. So you get a pass for being late, and it's all good. But everybody, how you doing today? Oh, it's okay. It's okay. How y'all doing today?
Very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Happy to be here with y'all.
I'm going to start off by saying that, you know, this was the South by Southwest selection in 2020. We know the world went on timeout, and that's unfortunate. Definitely was looking forward to attending South by Southwest last year. And I know you all were ready to bring this major project to the audience there. But nonetheless, we're here in March 2021, and this is a huge deal that now is going to be releasing on Shudder, which is your biggest home for thrillers, horrors, and all that good stuff. So what's sort of been like the mood and like the reaction going into this big release this week?
Yeah, I can kick us off. It's been really kind of a trip because, like you said, it's been basically a year since we were supposed to bring it out at South by Southwest. So it feels sort of like we hit pause and we did some virtual festivals, which were really amazing. And it was great to see sort of festivals try to like quickly figure out how do we run a festival when nobody can go anywhere. But this is really exciting for us. And it's been really interesting, especially to see the response from women who see the film, because the film really does dive very deeply into the experience that unfortunately a lot of women share. So that's been great. But I've also really enjoyed people maybe not expecting it to be quite so funny and so satirical. And that's really been the most fun, is people sort of being like, oh, this is funny. Is it funny? Is it okay? So that's really been the journey of discovery, you know, with new audiences has been a lot of fun.
And how about for you two?
Yeah, I think also seeing, kind of coming at it from the acting perspective and seeing what it's become now has been so fun and amazing to see the responses of it, and also just the beauty of what Bria and Natasha brought to it and created from it. Now I feel like there's moments when I think about it and I'm like damn, that was deep. And they did that, and they did it in such beautiful, nuanced, complex and fun ways. And so I feel like I'm like, now seeing the full picture, I'm like consistently unpacking and appreciating it as we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, it's such a cool thing to come on a project like this, because you start with just reading this really cool script. And I remember with this one, especially when the moment that you see in the trailer kind of hits on page 25 or something like that, I remember like just falling out of my seat almost with shock. I'm like, what is this? I've never seen a premise like this before. And then you get to do it on set, and I'm like, this feels really cool, and everyone's so good at it, but you don't see the finished product till so much later. Whereas I feel like, Natasha, I imagine it's in your head for a lot longer than that. So to now see it drop it's so cool. It's just, it looks so good. It's so cool to hear people, you know, talk about it. I have friends of mine who just are like, "What? This looks insane! I can't believe I've never seen a thriller or a horror movie with this sort of premise before." And I have at least one friend who says they absolutely will not watch it because they're too scared, but they want me to walk them through the whole time. So I want to do that.
Be a good friend. Do that. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I want to get into the meat of it now. So my first question is for Dhruv and Kausar. what was your first impression upon understanding the quote, "You're so lucky," being sort of the premise for the film? And did it change after viewing? And lastly, what would you think now if you heard the phrase being used, say, yesterday?
I think it speaks a little bit to what Natasha was saying earlier about how especially women have reacted to this film, because I think that thing about "You're So Lucky" is just, I don't know, there's something, the film is such an allegory in different ways for different things, and being attacked, certainly the way crimes are, when crimes are reported by women, the way they're treated. I think there's so much of that in this movie. So it comes to me pretty loaded, I guess, when I hear that now to describe the film, and I like that. I like how kind of nuanced it is. Yeah, I don't know. I got to think about that a little more, I guess. That's what comes to mind right away.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think exactly when reading it, I think there's that automatic feeling of like, from a writing perspective, it's like, oh, okay, like this is what survivors hear, and how are we kind of like putting it almost this, like what I see is almost like a sketch form of like beating it over its head over and over again and seeing it in all these different worlds. And so in that writing perspective, and now and seeing it, I feel like it added to the world of it all. And I feel like we hear things that we're not supposed to say in certain situations when it comes to being survivor centric or whatever it is. And I hope that only adds to the canon of that all the much more and supports why we have to be more conscious of the way that we address violence, the way we address harassment, all those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Natasha, huge fan of Imitation Girl, and I'm starting to notice a little bit of pattern with your projects. They always have strong themes, and I love that. I love watching projects that has entertainment factor, but underneath is something that's very important that you take away and put into your daily life. Would you say this is your niche? And also, would you say this is sort of the motivation behind you making film? Which I have to say, if it is, it's selfless, because this transcends beyond who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are listen, as a filmmaker, you are working on projects for years, and it really takes over your life. And it is such a part of your DNA and every aspect of your life when you're working on something. So, for me, there has to be something beyond face value. I think that there needs to be a spine to it. There needs to be a point. And again, it doesn't have to be a prescriptive message, right? Like with Lucky or even with Imitation Girl, we're not interested in telling people how to live their lives or how to get through tough situations. But I think the idea of making work that maybe opens a door to a conversation, right? Or is a conversation starter in some way. I think that's, for me, that is more fulfilling. And it's something that I can actually dedicate the time and energy, because you really do pour your whole self into it when you're a filmmaker or a writer, director, whatever it might be. And it needs to be enough to pull you through several years. Also, you're changing as a person, right? So like, as you come to each new project, your interests sort of change, your perspective on things change. Hopefully you're becoming more mature as a person in theory. So I think, to keep it challenging for yourself. And one thing that I really loved about the script for Lucky, I did not write the script for Lucky. It's written by our star Bria. And, I thought it was very ambitious. I thought it was it juggles a lot of tone. It's funny, it's dark, it's absurd. It's a piece of absurdity, right? It's a satire. So all of those things were so interesting to me to dive into, as long as there was still the spine, there was still the meat of it. That means something and that people can talk about afterwards. Absolutely.
That's a great answer. I think I would like to ask a quick question. Are you guys familiar with the horror subgenre we call Good for Her? Have you heard of that?
I don't think I am. No.
What does I have not.
Is that like revenge kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It came from rape revenge films,
Mhm.
and then the genre itself started making films about more broad experience. It's not all about rape. There's other things, and so now, thanks to Twitter, it's been molded into this makeshift subgenre that of feminist horror cinema that we call Good for Her. And I thought about that a lot after watching this film, and I've come to the conclusion that it's not going to be very easy to place in that subgenre because it covers a wider, more experienced way of life. It has a little bit of bleakness to it, and also it's funny, it's comical in moments, which is something that you don't really see in revenge films and the Good for Her-ness. It's usually, this is the point and this is the idea we're trying to portray, and this is how it should turn out at the end. So I just want to know from all of your points of view, from my brief description of what the subgenre is, would you consider it a Good for Her film at all?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of also an answer to your previous question. I think all three of us are interested in the space that exists between the genres. I don't think either of us are interested in fitting into an exact, slot or category. And that's sort of the work that I know I'm drawn to, and I think these guys are also drawn to. So I think, taking a little bit from here and a little bit from there, certainly, but each project needs to have its own, its own code, its own personality. I'm not really interested in making work that fits exactly into a prescribed category, if that makes sense. But it certainly, there is some of it. I think it sounds a little bit like the Good for Her is a little bit, has sort of like a singular perspective. And I think our film is a little bit more interested in looking at the nuance. For example, our main character, and even, the two characters, Ted and Sarah, they're all imperfect, right? So no one is purely a villain or purely a good person. And so I think that nuance is a little bit more interesting than, get a gun and kill all the bad guys. Which has its own place, but that's not necessarily the kind of film that I'm looking to make.
I think, just to add to that, I think a big part of the fun for me, and this was mentioned earlier, but just the satire element of it is so fun, and something that we don't always get to see tied in within the horror. And I feel like that gives an opportunity to tie in some of the comedy, which that's kind of the background that me and Dhruv come from as well. And so I think in that sense, it's such a fun amalgamation of all these things, and allows us to tap into all those little gauges.
Yeah, totally. I think you guys both set it all up. The only thing I'll add to that is what you were saying, Natasha, about existing between the genres is such a good way to put it, where I feel like this movie really is if there was a Venn diagram of the Good for Her subgenre of horror and the all these other, and of course satire and comedy and absurdism, it's this tiny little spot in the middle of that Venn diagram that I hope this movie occupies, or at least it feels like it when I'm watching.
Those are exactly the answers that I would
I think there's also DNA of a lot of different subgenres in Lucky. And that is also part of the fun of it, right? So it's like the skin of a slasher movie, right? We have a masked killer, but it's not about the big twist of who the killer is, right? Like, so we're picking and choosing little things. And a lot of that is in the script. And then a lot of that is sort of what we discovered when bringing it to the screen. So I think it's a lot of different genetic code from a lot of different subgenres of horror and comedy.
Venn diagrams, genetic codes. I'm loving that.
Formulas.
Stem cell research, yes.
Quantum physics.
It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie.
I love the point about existing in between the genres, because I got a lot of slasher. I also got a lot of sci-fi, the whole kind of blanket feeling of like, am I in the Twilight Zone right now? What is this? And of course the the frustration of really not getting the ends tied up. But that's not really the point here. Is really unique. And personally, as a horror fan that exists on Twitter, I am looking forward to people fighting over this one. Because it's not easily placed in the box, and that's why I like this so much. Those perfect answers. Thank you.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You first.
No, I was just going to say there's also a part of it that reminds me. There's an old like 60s I think unfinished Orson Welles movie called The Trial, based on like a Franz Kafka novel, and it's kind of like that a little bit, where the protagonist is just thrust into this insane world, and you're trying to you along with the protagonist are trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And I don't know if that's a subgenre, but it feels like a very film.
Sure. Yeah, definitely feeling that.
One of our reviews described the movie as John Carpenter with a touch of Kafka, which I thought was just
yeah. I would totally agree with that. Yeah, I love the internet.
So funny.
Oh man. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's talk about Brea Grant for a second, who plays May. Now, being African American, 2020 was a very, very challenging year, and there was a lot of activism work that went into that year. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in regards to women. And when I looked at the character May, and I've read some reviews, and I typically don't do this, but I read some reviews, and I'm seeing May being billed as a lot of words that I would not use. So I'm going to tell you how I feel about May, and I just kind of want to hear your reactions to this. So I don't see May as a bad guy. I'm starting off right there. But I do see her as just a combination of a bunch of different women's experiences that's dealt with trauma, who's just trying to navigate through life by means of protecting herself because no one else will. What would be your reactions to that, and or how would you describe this character, May?
I think that's beautifully put. I completely agree. As a director, one of my processes is creating little documents for each of the characters, sort of outlining their spine and where they're coming from, how they like to solve problems, all that kind of stuff. And for May, I think the fact that she's a self-help book writer was really significant. And this is a woman who thinks that she has her career is literally having answers to problems. And she is finally presented with a problem that she can't fix using her sort of normal prescribed how to get through your day thing. And I think that is really the core conflict of it and what kind of got me jazzed about it, right? Like, what happens when you put this woman who has all the answers and is, she's buttoned up, right? She's top button, hair just so, braids are perfect. For me, it was, we lightened Brea's hair. I really wanted her to have like all the warmth in her hair completely pulled out. So she just had this like icy cold blonde, I just bring that up as one detail. And then what happens when suddenly things start to get messy around her? And, I think what you're saying is beautifully put. And I think that's where we end up at the end of the movie. We're in that place, but she starts the movie buttoned up, all the answers, hair just so, I fixed things with my husband. Our marriage is back on track. All of those things. And then we start to see it unravel. And absolutely, that's exactly it.
And I was going to say, like, too, there's even sprinkles that she's obviously dealt with trauma outside of her marriage. I mean, even the twirling of the keys triggered her, which I went back to watch and I was like, what is it with this? And I thought, like, is there something else in the scene that I'm missing? But I'm realizing these may just be events of things in the past that ultimately is just, it's not supposed to have a bigger significance by the idea that things could trigger people that you may not be aware of. So, so I want to just change the question just a little bit to you, because I want to change it to Sarah. And the reason why I want to change it about Sarah with you, because Sarah plays this middle wedge of a character that's super relatable with people, between the protection of her brother, but also understanding the experiences that her friend is going through. So could you kind of put that into perspective?
Yeah. And if I may comment briefly on the question before,
sure.
I think the amalgamation of the trauma, and at the same time, right, like it is, if this is where you were getting at, it is played by a white woman, right? So it's like, what are the other intersections of trauma out there as well that play into the narrative? So I think it's exciting in that it represents all these different types of trauma and just what are those added intersections.
And the missed intersections.
Yeah.
And the missed intersections. And we talked about this, Kausar, when we were putting it together, that they're not able to connect, that there is this sort of block between these two women, whatever it is, you know, there's millions of different elements at play here, but that they're actually not able to intersect, and that it's missed opportunities for connection. And that's the tragedy of the character. But sorry, go on, Kausar.
Yeah, no. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah, that's so real. So all the things, right? All the things can coexist. And then to add to that of this person who's in the middle, I mean, there's a lot of, the way I saw Sarah is also this kind of internalized, gosh, the word's escaping me right now, but this internalized patriarchy, this internalized thing that, you know, sometimes we protect as women, like what are we protecting, right? So we're protecting the systems that hurt ourselves because we're taught that we have to protect them. So, and also, so that's kind of where I kind of formed Sarah from. So, and we see this every day where it's like, how are we perpetuating systems, even though we are victims of the systems? And I think that's why I loved Sarah so much within that all. She's
a survivor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For better or for worse, you know, she's making her way through.
and Dhruv, I that's kind of to add something to this as well too. You know, you being the husband of the character Sarah, like, what was kind of how did you kind of fit into that role? And like, was there, like, I know the job acting is you know, something you do day in and day out, but was there ever internal conflict with your position as this character, considering how delicate this character is and we see on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think a little bit, yeah. Even initially when we were just talking about the role, when I was speaking to Bria about it from a writing point of view, and I wanted to know, you know, I was very conscious of the delicate nature of this sort of big allegory that the movie was building and built on, and I did want to know, like, how did she want me to approach it and play it? And I think she was a little deliberately coy, and Natasha too, in a way where I was like, he's meant to be a little ambiguous, you know. He's meant to be. I think Ted's the person the closest man in May's life, and yet despite that, she can't really trust him. And I think that says a lot about, you know, the people closest to us sometimes in our lives, the people who should be our allies. And I think that there was that when in playing it where I was like, I think just kind of being ambiguous is a little bit part of this character. A little bit of him is that he is very loving and he shows that care and love and then at other times he's cold and distant and bounces when he's needed most, which is what he does in the movie. Yeah. So I think a lot. So yeah, it was definitely interesting to play and very challenging in that way. But I think also I applaud like Natasha's instinct to. I think it was a big part of your instinct, Natasha, to cast people with comedy in their tool belt and improv, especially. I think when you can do comedy, there's like a natural ambiguity to dramatic scenes because the audience can't tell if this person's being funny right now or just being for real. So I think that was kind of that made it a little. I think very on screen it comes out super interesting. I think hopefully.
Yeah,
I like that you brought so much vulnerability to Ted too. And also going through the footage and when we were putting it together, you know, just when you just let him be almost like a little kid, it works so well. Where he just he's not processing, you know, he's not understanding, and it's that like frustration that makes it funny, but also you're like, God damn it, Ted!
Oh my God,
we know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
In the car, we know.
Nadia like sent me a message through our screening thing, like, God, I hate this guy.
I'm sorry, Dhruv.
Good, that's perfect.
So look, we'll come up on our final question because I know we're coming up on our times of zero. You can definitely close it out with it.
All right. So, okay, a quick question before the big banger. So for Natasha, the ending brings everything full circle in a way that doesn't rely on the context of the movie. And I know this is kind of a question for Bria, but I feel like you may be able to answer it. But did you and Bria determine this crazy, unique ending first, and you based the rest of the film how you were going to present it in the beginning, or was it something that came with the process?
So the original script does not see anything. The original script, she pulls off the mask and it cuts to black. And that's the end.
Okay.
And you never see anything. And I felt, to be honest, that would be blue-balling the audience. I was like, that sucks.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. I know we have no money and we have no time with this movie, but like, we got to say something. We got to say something. And I think it's very clear what we're saying, you know, you know, so for me, it was really just saying like, let's say something, right? Like, let's use this second to last shot to bring it home, right? Like, I hate when movies are like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, you know? So for me, I was like, no, it's a supernatural creature. She's stuck in the Twilight Zone. It's an amalgamation of her fear and the threat that she lives with. Like, let's put it on screen, you know? So, so that is different from the original, but it was, it certainly was Bria's intent. Her, you know, for me coming to the script, I think the reason Bria and I worked very well together, and then ultimately when we expanded out the cast and brought on these wonderful people, you know, everybody, including our department heads, our technical team, everyone knows the movie that we're making. Everyone understood it. If you didn't, don't be a part of this team because it's not going to work. Everyone kind of has to understand what we're doing with this movie, what the unifying themes and point is, all brought together by the journey of this woman, right? It's a crescendo of weirdness as she's going farther and farther into the Twilight Zone. So I think, you know, this is my long-winded way of saying, you know, for me, that end was just like, we all know what we're saying. Let's just say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there you have it, folks. That's what we're looking at. I love it.
But there's no resolution. I mean, I think the other thing here is like, you know, we're making our statement, but it's to me, the end of the movie, actually, honestly, very similar to my first film. It's opening a door to something else. The movie itself, the 80 minutes of your experience is just the prologue to the actual conversation and the actual, you know, meat and potatoes of what this character is going to go through. And I'm very interested in that. I'm interested in the movie as a lift-off point. So it's not like you're coming to some super solid, heavy resolution at the end. It's more like,
absolutely,
what do you think happens?
Najir and I love to talk about this. The best movies are the movies that leave the theater with you later on. And this certainly was one of them. So I'm glad I got my answer.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. And I just want to also say too that how can you put a solution to something that exists that there isn't a solution for right now? So you know, much like your styles in other projects, it's the idea of you're starting conversation, and I think this continues to further the narrative and the conversations amongst people. And I think there's no better time than right now. So. I really love, and it's crazy too, in the height of 2020 initially being released, like these are powerful messages coming out, and I definitely appreciate how it all came together. So it's a beautiful story. So
thank you.
But all you all, thank you so much for stopping in and chatting with us today. Lucky, again, folks, is going to be premiering on Shudder March 4th. Again, we have Natasha, the director. We have 2 stars, Kausar and Dhruv. Again, this is a film you definitely want to watch and just be ready, because you're not going to see what's coming, and you absolutely will have a lot to say after it. So, you know, don't come on our Twitter trying to start war with us, because we're not going to do that.
No.
But nonetheless, it's a good movie, and I appreciate you all's effort into making this happen, especially in the weird times of 2020. So
yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and we'll catch you around for more interviews very soon. Peace out, folks.